Welcome to Potentiality, a space for big questions, deep conversations, and shared wisdom around the most meaningful thing we do as human beings, which is how we parent and educate the next generation. I am delighted to introduce today's guest, Aminah Teachout, a writer, yoga teacher, and integrative coach whose work centers on sustainable wellness, embodied awareness, and our relationship to ourselves and the living world. Through her coaching and teaching, Aminah supports individuals in designing lives aligned with their goals and deeply rooted in self awareness, intentional habits, and seasonal body based practices. Her approach weaves together movement, stillness, and inquiry, inviting a more conscious way of living that is both grounded and expansive. Welcome, Aminah. It's a true pleasure having you today with for a very important conversation. Welcome.
Thank you so much for having me and for everyone listening. It's a pleasure to be here and happy Earth Day.
Yes, happy upcoming Earth Day. And that's exactly why we're meeting today, because you recently posted something that not only resonated, it reverberated through my entire system. It was just this visceral experience. And your quote said, "When the magnetism of our hearts expands beyond our skin, we begin to recognize Earth as our body." And I want to start our conversation by unpacking this quote. I really want to know what meaning you put into this and really open up the conversation about what Earth Day truly means, beyond what happens in the mainstream, and how people who are listening to us, our viewers, can really learn to embody exactly what you're trying to communicate through this quote. So let's really start by unpacking. When you speak about the magnetism of the heart, what does that mean in your lived experience? So not just conceptually, but more
Mhm.
somatically.
Mhm. Yeah. I think we all have the experience of our heart beating a little more quickly or laboriously, like a weight on our hearts. And so these things are very closely related to the magnetic field or the resonance of our heart. And it's not unique to our heart, it's related to our brain and to all the large organs of our body. And so just the ease with which we sit in our own skin and our own body and the ease with which we move it through our life. And there are some times in our life that things are really tight and really limited and everything is hard or uncertain, or we even freeze and don't move. And other times that stillness is a very scary place where emotions arise and uncomfortable things occur in the body or in the mind. So the magnetism of the heart is that, this kind of pole around of which all of that energy is organized, and is that magnetism organized, right? Is it in a way that can allow me to live towards sustainable wellness, or am I
Mhm.
living more towards anxiety, more towards fear, for example?
Mhm.
And when that
Beautiful.
comes, beyond our skin, what does that mean, right? When we stretch our arms out wide, this is the space of our heart's magnet, right? It's about 6 feet. It's about our arm span, and even that, like I said, changes throughout our life, throughout our day, maybe even. And so to take accountability for this whole space around us, we begin to care a little bit more for our environment. We begin to see how connected we are to our environment, maybe in like a very physical sense, like the shape of our furniture. We're all grown adults now, but the Montessori method was very much about creating a world the size of a child so that their body might learn to live in the world. And we're still doing that. We're still kind of trained towards boxes and smallness and not acknowledging this like beautiful heart bubble that we all actually walk through our day with. And that's why we have yoga classes and some fitness work that helps us open the body up to maintaining that movement. Uh, um, which is related, stillness and movement are so related to the magnetism of the heart.
Mhm. Beautifully explained. You've touched upon the question that I really wanted to ask, because beyond the discussions and trying to find answers to big questions, I want to make these dialogues very practical and useful for our audience. And you touched upon, just incorporating yoga and just the way you walk. So, but what does it look like in a daily life, in the fast-paced life, when we're just trying to maximize or optimize our lives and just meet the demands, and take care of the responsibilities that we have, especially as parents, because this is more geared towards older audience, who are raising families and have children and are busy professionals. So what does it look like in daily life? What does it feel like? What does it look like to really expand the magnetism and actually live from that place?
Sure. And I think time scarcity is a huge one, focusing on how little time it might actually take to gain
Mm,
awareness of your natural environment, that the sunrise and the sunset are just a few minutes of hundreds of minutes we have in our potentially waking day. So, to organize the family even around that, whether it's setting an alarm or having windows and some gathering time around the sunset often, but maybe the sunrise too, if everybody's an early bird. For me, the sunrise is a very, very sacred time where I can do a lot of grounding and just organizing my energy for the day. So those are two opportunities every day. And then the moon, I use a lot of moon calendars. I have one just handy. And what it is, it's just a reminder of the new and full moon, because everybody is a bit sensitive to the moon, and naturally so. We have so much water in our brains and in our bodies, so if it can move the tides, it can certainly move us. And so whether that's our sleep cycles or our creative urge or our moods, um, creative vibe, everybody can kind of become aware of that. And if noticing the moon during the day or at night is difficult for you, the quarter
mhm.
moon, this beautiful half moon shape that we see up there, is a reality check. Make time for this. It doesn't take long actually to really feel the rhythm of the earth. And now, especially in springtime, to watch things grow, there's such a double side. For me, when I started to feel the magnetism of my heart expand beyond my skin, I had a hypersensitivity to some environmental crises, and especially the mountains where I was from, and couldn't really bear to imagine that this was happening. It felt very personal to me. And I think that that is an important step in taking it personally, that these harms to our environment are personal harms, that it's our right to a healthy planet many generations ahead. So, not to take it on as a sorrowful burden, like it's hurting me personally, but to trust that my actions can be embodied in a way that I am defending harms upon an extension of my body, this planet, for sure. So, to balance that, and the easiest way to do that in everyday life is to focus on the growth, the resilience, the service even of decay. That fungal systems are a huge part of nourishing our environment. And even a fallen tree has a lot of service to its community.
Beautiful. So, what you're speaking is to really align our rhythms, our natural biological rhythms, with the natural rhythms of the environment that we live in, which is the planet
Mhm.
Earth. And you're definitely speaking to somebody who is highly sensitive to the moon cycles because of my astrology. My moon is in Pisces, and so is the Venus, and it's Scorpio ascending. I mean, I've got the whole package, and I feel every single bit of it. And what you just spoke to, which is the harm that we're experiencing that is done to the natural environment, it's personal. And my first experience of that was, and I don't know, you've probably driven up the 5 freeway, and there are this little oil pumping, this little cranes. I don't even know what they're called, but they're methodically and regularly, they're pumping oil. And every time you drive, there's this scene. So first time I drove through it, I can't even explain the visceral feeling, just the pain in my own body. And
Mm.
tears started just rolling down my cheeks. I could not make sense of that experience at the time. I wasn't as aware as I am now, and understanding more of those subtle processes. I was way more clueless at the time. So I could not make sense of it. But that experience happened over and over and over again. So whenever I have a chance, I actually don't take that route. But sometimes I intentionally do because I feel like that's an opportunity for the earth to almost release the pain and the suffering that it is accumulating, or it's actually being done to it in the moment, is to cleanse through me. So, very, very interesting experience. And sometimes I'm conflicted by it. So, I wonder if you had anything like that in your own experience.
Definitely. And what I would just add to your reflections is that we're observers, right? That to
Mm,
observe is a sacred act. And so to simply become aware of its happening is kind of one level, and then what it does to us physiologically is another. And then to
mm,
kind of align that, I I don't know which tipping point, it was in my young life, but I think we really do live in exciting times where, um, I think one very tangible example is like disposable cups and
mhm,
plastics. God help us with the plastics. So, and all of these things are just not as simple as they seem. We have wonderful plastics in our worlds for medical equipment and for sanitary purposes, and it's really about changing our ability to reuse or demand better plastics. That we're really at a consumer peak where when we talk to our
mm,
neighbors, where we talk to the brands we buy from, when we actually boycott and remove ourselves from companies unwilling to provide a better quality way of being, when we experiment with like, what can I do without packaging? How do I prepare foods differently to not need packaging for my lunch or for my child's lunch or whatever? It's very personalized practice
mhm,
that we have to undergo, but ultimately it does reduce the waste, reduce the supply chain, and create a little more harmony in everyday behavior.
mm. So you're really speaking to responsibility. When you feel it as a personal harm, and you're this attuned with the natural environment, it really shifts the responsibility that you start taking. And it doesn't have to be anything massive or start a movement, but it's in your daily actions and how you approach, how you live your own life that really makes a difference. And oftentimes it's overlooked. It feels like I'm just one person. There isn't much that I can do. I'm too
Mm-hmm.
busy with all other things. But those like little choices actually add up and make an impact on the
Absolutely.
environment.
And they
So our
inform culture.
responsibility changes. Hmm.
Yeah, and a culture of care, not just responsibility, but care. When I
Mm.
was really young, I would get obsessed with sorting trash and recycling. So it was a very different reality in Europe than in America in terms of how we treat our waste management. And I think we've all seen there's also a space for corruption in waste management. So sometimes we're sorting our trash, stressing our housemates out, sorting our trash, and then it all gets put in this one massive pile. I mean, it can be a really nightmarish scenario. All of that said, though, why did I start going down this trash um, conversation? I'm so sorry. I've just forgotten my point here. Sorting trash, making the most out of it, reducing it. I don't know. We'll
Just
just
as an
have
individual choice, right? It's how we choose
Oh,
to
to
live as
care. Yes, no, I
one
meant
to
yes. The
care.
inner child
Hmm.
comes. Thank you for keeping me on track. So, as a child, I would get frustrated that we wouldn't sort trash, and I continue to this day,
Hmm.
understanding this frustration and seeing it reflected in others. It comes up in this pursuit of sustainable wellness to have less packaging. So, all of that said, um, I used to get frustrated because I would think about the archaeological record of trash, and that at least if we sorted these plastics, these things that we knew were never going to decompose or were going to do so at a radically slow pace. If we took responsibility to sort them aside, people in the future would know we at least knew what we were dealing with. We weren't just totally careless humans. And so this idea of caring, that I cared about all of the imprint I had on the planet and I organized it to the optimal outcome for myself, for my loved ones, and for the future generations, right? That there is some culture in sorting trash, even if there's not like a practical reality in everybody's home in every city at every moment, right?
Beautiful. So this way of relating to Earth that is very visceral, like in your own body, how is this different from the way environmentalism or sustainability is often approached or framed? Is there any difference?
Definitely. I mean, we get agency in what we feel in our body. We want to be
Mm,
able to control the emotions that naturally emerge. And so I think there is a lot of fear that comes with becoming aware at a global level, and maybe misinformation, maybe some own storytelling, and to really begin very, very locally. So, awareness of soil. I say it quite kindly. Have we touched soil recently? I'm working on a greenhouse. I've been committed to growing my own food for a long time, but I'm aware that for a lot of folks, touching the food at the grocery store is a departure from the norm sometimes, and to actually see the food, how it grows from the plant or how it's processed to get to them, and exploring new ways of engaging with food and dirt specifically, really just to notice the soil in your environment. And you were talking about the five, and the architecture of our roads is sometimes an entry point for some people into environmental issues. Is like, why is this road flooding, or why is this traffic so bad? And it's like, native grasses actually act like sponges under the ground to soak up rain. So we do have kind of a better public administrative experience in places
Mhm.
that live in harmony with the planet. And we have so many entry points into this.
Mhm. So we really lost this connection with Earth over time, with the evolution. And I really need to ask you this question because we live in highly digitized world, and
Mm-hmm.
especially our youth, they spend so much time in front of a computer or with video games. And you just mentioned, touching food in the grocery store. It's really not experiencing like nature in its
Mm-hmm.
just authentic way, in its original way. So what is it really, how does this modern life impact our capacity to feel the connection? And particularly, what is the role of technology in it?
Yes. What a complicated
It's
question.
it's a loaded question.
It's a big one. Personally, I am the mother of a screenager who is
Hmm.
highly, his world, his choice world exists on the Xbox. He wants to be in that world. And so in our home, the counter pose to the screen is jumping on the trampoline, it's taking a hike, it's checking on the chickens. It's actually becoming bored. I've had to use this language with my Gen Alpha child. I've had to say, your screen break lasts until you are bored, right? Because that is what they're missing. They're missing the kind of creativity and resilience that comes from being bored, from not being stimulated, from having to kind of move organically through these thoughts and feelings because of what's happening in the environment, not what we've plugged into and are being served. Um, and I don't know. I personally fantasize about all the electricity going out and make sure that we're ready. But I know that that's probably not it. And, in my own journey, my brother has been off grid and living in a permacultural way for a very, very long time. So it was in my imagination as a teenager. And yet now in my 40th year, I'm finally feeling like I have the ability to create these things in my life, the chicken coop, the garden, and it's not easy. It's not for everyone. And so I think the internet actually is a really important part for people finding the skills that they want to learn, and the community to kind of balance the skills that maybe aren't gonna be learned quickly enough season to
Hmm.
season.
Hmm.
So it is a huge balance between screen use and really what we're consuming, the quality of what we're consuming, the privacy of what we're consuming, even the effort to receive it, the cost of data and the cost of internet. So it's a wild time, and I wish I had more advice for folks other than to get outside and get prepared.
And the truth is that we don't really know all the answers, and
Mm,
we don't need to know. I think it's almost an individual quest. If you're really intentional about restoring the connection, or you're really feeling you need to deepen this connection and feel the earth as the extension of your body, then what steps you can take and just find your own answers. It's not that we want to provide those answers, it's just go on that quest and find what's yours, and maybe use technology intentionally just to get the access to what's out there. And maybe you end up moving to a place where it's in more resonance and how you want to restore the connection with the earth.
hugely, hugely.
Yeah.
One personal example, I have a friend who turns her Wi-Fi on and off at night like a light switch.
Mhm. Mhm.
And she's very sensitive to energy. And for her, turning off the Wi-Fi felt like a better night's sleep. And that was the first time I had seen that habit. And I really loved that idea. And often when I talk about that with people, they say, well, what would I do when I wake up in the middle of the night? I love that. Like, yeah, you might look at the stars, you might breathe, you might read, you might stretch your body.
Mhm.
It might be a wonderful change. But again, the ability to build discipline and the ability to build structures, we balance the two and we get choice. That's always really important to me. We want to have fun and be joyful while we create the positive change we need.
Beautifully said. So I wonder, Amina, what are some simple practices or entry points for someone who wants to begin, just start reconnecting with the earth this way or deepening their connection to truly embody in their living and how they move through life? And in that regard, how does this perspective influence the way we care for ourselves, our own bodies, our own energy? And you already spoke about the rhythm. So, how does self-care, in the most, I think, comprehensive way, body, mind, energy, what we put into our body in terms of food, nutrition. So, how does it help deepen the connection? What are some practical, like entry points that you could offer to somebody who's just kind of waking up to the responsibility and the shifts that maybe they want to make in their life?
Yeah, hugely. Taking care of our energy body, right? Adding a whole new chapter to your self care for your energy body, which can be a little bit about studying, about getting to understand the chakra system and how the energy body grows within us, and to physically touch the body, self massage. I was taught by my grandma. She took so much pride that she massaged herself every day. And I was learning that while doing yoga training. And it's so important to our longevity to really touch ourselves, to give lymphatic release, to give nervous system release. So all of those very sensual, very immediately available, even just a hug. Oh my goodness, self hugs can be such a rewarding practice with the physical, just trying to get your fingers towards your shoulders, or with the imaginary, leaning into those loved ones that you want to send that positivity to. All of these practices are hugely helpful. And I can't resist sharing a game I've created for families who want to introduce their children to the mind body. So this is a practice that is for all ages. I do this throughout the day. I encourage everybody to get used to talking to their body in a way that tones their energy body. So we won't play the whole game necessarily, but this is the chakra jump. And just like when we study the mind body, the heart is a gateway. So we can just kind of talk about the first four today, but it's a jumping game. It can also be a walking game, or, it can be remixed in many, many ways. But classically, we put these mats down and we jump mat to mat, starting with a nice deep breath. Each color mat has a physical movement and an affirmation. So at the red mat, which is our root chakra, we touch our hips and we say, I am safe. And I think that this is so, so important for all the adults, right? All of our inner children, to start building a habit of default safe. I am at home in my body. I'm safe no matter what. And when parents introduce the mind body to their children, they can explain that this root chakra is where it all begins. It's why the game begins here. It's why we say this first. And that in the imaginal practice, it's actually spinning outward around us. It is this foundation that we walk through life with. I personally think of it like a red dervish dress that's spinning
Mhm.
around me at different speeds at different points in my life. And so to touch the hips, to say, I am safe. When I have played this game with grown men, they've started to cry because they've just never had an opportunity in their life to be seen touching their hips and saying, I'm safe. And it's
Mhm.
powerful what the mind body gains from that experience. So, naturally, when we move upward, I am strong, I am happy, and I am loved. That self hug I was just talking about a minute ago. So, having this game in your house, playing it takes less than a minute. But the thought is, if you play it just a minute a month, you've brought children, other adults into this world who have had the experience of affirming that they're loved, that they're safe, right? And that really does add up over time. That your likelihood to go to these dark places is less and less because you've built a neural pathway towards these positive, uplifted, heart centered ones. So, yes, that is the chakra jump. And it is such a part of my practice and part of my life, and something I would love more and more people to know about. So, on
That
Earth Day, of
is
course, I was going to
beautiful.
share the chakra jump.
Thank you so much for sharing. We will, if you have it somewhere digitally, maybe we can link
Yeah,
that in
I'll
the
put it on
description
top.
box under this video. But just, I wanted to ask you to clarify real quick. I know most of our audience is probably well aware of that, but what are chakras for those of them who are probably hearing that word for the first time?
Sure. Yeah, it's a Sanskrit word. So you could think of it in English as an energy center, right? That we have these energy centers in our body, and that classically there might be seven of them, and that they're also related to our glands in our physical body. So they're not just imaginary thoughts, but actual places in the body where energy moves and crosses into little chakras or wheels that move the energy upward and downward. So no matter how much you know about your chakras, you can get to know them upward. Does this feel comfortable to talk about? How does it feel when I say these things that she says out loud? And that it becomes easier. It teaches you things up and down, and that chakras actually work in pairs. That the throat chakra, often associated with our ability to communicate and whatnot, might, based on how it spins, actually have more to do with how we listen or how we perceive what we hear, right? Or what we do with what we hear. So I think it's so important to follow your intuition and just listen to your body and to lean into what intrigues you. In my practice and study of yoga, I had teachers who told me, don't worry about the Sanskrit, the meaning will find you naturally. And I think there's a lot of benefit to studying primary sources, of course. And that was really liberating for me. I didn't give myself any hard time for not knowing these words while finding benefit in using them.
Beautiful. And I'm really looking forward to playing that game myself. I really am. I am a pretty serious yogi. I'm at the yoga studio every single day, and I've studied Sanskrit back in the day. Really took a deep dive. I'm trained as a yoga teacher. Not that I teach, but I'm trained in that. But regardless, this sounds so exciting. Just a full embodied practice of understanding your energy body. It's so powerful, particularly with little kids. So, with that, I want to ask you, Aminah, we talk a lot about parenting on this channel. So I really want to address kind of that angle as well. So how does a parent's relationship with Earth shape the way a child experiences the world? And you're a parent yourself, so I'm just curious how that really transfers over, like epigenetically, what we as parents model, and the impact that it has on the child's life eventually, how connected or disconnected they will be. Because I think when we're disconnected from our environment, that really speaks to the disconnection from self. And this is where all our challenges start.
Yeah. Yeah, it's a beautiful question. And I I think sharing in being inclusive is the
Mm.
best practice we can have as parents, is acknowledging how good it feels to be connected or reconnect to earth, or just assuming that our children are already connected, right? That they might not need that reconnection, looking to them to confirm the connection, just making space and time for it, even if it's literally just the roadside herbs or a park in a you don't have to travel far away to experience nature. You can see it moving grass, you can see clouds in the sky, you can watch condensation in a bottle on the dash of a car. It doesn't have to be this excursion. It can be this personal awareness of a sprout. It can be very, very tiny and very easy to practice. I think that for me personally, I was very much driven to have a child because I felt like the culture shift our planet needed couldn't occur in just my generation. And that the
Mm.
partnership I had with my grandmother and my mother also was kind of insufficient for the future we were headed towards. That I really saw integrity and essentialness in this intergenerational push. And
Mm.
it remains really, really important to me. However, when I was a new mom, I thought, like, I'm raising a little environmental warrior. I'm raising a child who will fight for this planet. And the truth is, my son came with his own soul's quest, into this world, and he is a child in the same way that I was, enculturated in ways that I know and don't know and can control and can't control and might heal from and might not. And that there's just so much less that we can control one generation to the other, but we can participate one generation to another. So with my elderly friends and family, I can ask them about cremation and death and how they might see their body entering the planet at this point in their life. For my teenagers, what real food have they eaten recently and where did it grow and what's in season? And the practice is very personalized, generation to generation, and no expectations, just a lot of heart centered showing up embodiment. Yeah.
Mhm. Just an invitation to participate
Mm-hmm.
and then take what feels theirs, what truly resonates.
That
Mm.
is theirs, right? That human right to this planet, this
Hmm.
human right to a planet that grows food and lives in harmony with the sun. That we too, as humans, should be inclined to believe that we can have food freely available to us and live in harmony with the seasons. Mm-hmm.
Thank you. That was a beautiful, beautiful response. Amina, I do a lot of work around emotional intelligence, and it is fully embedded into what you're talking about and what we're discussing today. And from that lens, I want to ask you, how do we learn to hold both love and grief when we witness harm to the earth, particularly as more sensitive people, younger people who feel the injustice, but I feel like their voice is not shaped, fully enough to do anything about it, who are still growing into their leadership. When they're still younger, I work a lot with children, young adults, and I think it's still shaping for a lot of them, but at the same time, they're feeling the grief. So, how do we learn what's the emotional intelligence maybe around this? How do we hold those two, that dichotomy, that it doesn't destroy us and we become disempowered empaths, but rather reconnect with our inner power and the knowing that we can act on it and actually make a difference?
Yeah, yeah, wonderful, wonderful work and question. I use the affirmation grief comes in waves to remind us to be like the ocean. So to expand, to make sure that these emotions are always expanding. In my practice, I actually like allow a few days of my month to cry about the sad things happening on earth.
Mm.
I don't give myself any guilt and shame. I've told my cohabitants in my home that this is a safe time for me to do this. I feel these things and I want to let it out so that it doesn't stay stuck in my heart.
Mm.
There's a lot of evidence that anger and holding on to grudge is very, very dangerous for us. And so to get practiced with releasing grief, I think is really important, and to not get stuck in any of those waves, to not get stuck in the anger, to not get stuck in the denial, to not get stuck in the bargaining, to move through those cycles of grief as easily and as quickly as you can. And um, to hold space for others to articulate that grief. Like when you first started to ask the question, I thought, oh no, am I going to talk about land acknowledgement? This seems kind of cliche. But the truth is, we've been building a movement towards acknowledging land. It's a very tangible way that people can be
Mhm.
invited to take a moment to orient themselves wherever they are on earth. And so for young people and people entering the workforce to start meetings with a land acknowledgement, to start family gatherings even with an acknowledgement. Do you know the name of the native land we live on? Do you know the name of that mountain? Do you know the name of this? And just to say these words and to hold space where something maybe more superficial might have happened, and just to actually leave a pause at the start of gatherings for people who are feeling grief, and that grief could extend every single day to things happening across the planet, that nobody has to have incurred a deep personal loss to be tapped into that grief, and that everybody deserves space to release it. So creating a habit to recognize grief, maybe.
Mm. Beautiful. Hold space and create a habit.
Yeah.
Wow, amazing. Now, Earth Day is only 2 days away. It's on April 22nd, and I have a special relationship with that day because I happen to be
Oh,
born on that day.
happy
And
birthday!
thank you so much. And I don't think it's by accident, and that's why I feel so deeply everything that has to do with our ultimate mother, because
Mhm,
we don't
mhm,
exist without her.
mhm.
And so. Earth Day has become a day of action. It's a day of awareness, but it's also a day of action. So, what does meaningful, embodied action look like from this place of connection with the planet Earth as the extension of my body?
Right? I think really giving time to drop into one's heart, to start to imagine how you feel reflected in the earth, to give yourself plenty of time to feel creative about this. For example, dropping into that creative space, some folks might go to the ocean, to the sea creatures, others to leaves, to roots, to trees. I mean, there's so many ways that we can imagine Mama Earth. And so to first kind of feel out those imaginative proximity that you already have, right? to
Hmm.
really hold space for it because it's going to guide you authentically towards the action, right? In my practice, I like to keep it simple and I like to keep it highly repeatable. So every month, I encourage folks to fill in some blanks, and two of the blanks are more and less. Sometimes the whole sentence, I want more blank in my life, I want less blank in my life. And I think when we do this from a heart-centered space, recognizing earth is our body, like what would I have less of to feel more connected to earth? And so a tangible example would be like Wi-Fi or lights, like maybe celebrating sunsets and candlelight for a few weeks this summer, having a really different tempo with electricity because you can. But
Hmm.
it could be something, like single use papers and plastics. There's so many tiny things we can do to help the planet, and they should never be discredited. But the way that we connect beyond the mind body in this very big way that you can imagine yourself as actually one, I think guides us to bolder action.
Thank you for that. Now, this podcast is called Potentiality. And towards the end of each episode, we discuss the large scale impact of the topic that we're discussing. So I want to ask this traditional question that what kind of a world becomes possible if people begin to live from this place of awareness and embodied connection with the planet Earth?
A vibrant, abundant world. A vibrant, abundant world that is less painful and far more joyful. I think that that's the most important thing. That when I reach roadblocks in teaching mind body fitness, it's because we live in a world that is constantly attacking our mind body fitness. So it can seem unrealistic to imagine that as a basic survival trait taught to very young people. Like, what would it look like if we lived in a world of very mentally fit humans? And I think we all have pockets of that. I think we all strive to create those pockets, but to really live in a world run by mentally fit humans, to trust that all of our interactions are for a joyful, optimal, sustainable wellness. To have that would be so incredible. And it is really a generation away all the time if we participate with one another and keep our three generations alive and well together talking, to actually be alive and engaged. And so I think it really goes both directions. I know we're working with parenting, but to stay connected to our aging relatives is so important, to get their stories out and to remind them that
Mhm.
they have mind bodies too, and that this transition for them is relevant to their mind body fitness. I think that is so, so important. And it weaves in um, hidden benefits maybe for the generations in between.
Mm. It's always one generation away. That was a beautiful statement. And we really want that generation to be this generation, right? Finally, to be this generation who actually lives in that embodied, connected way with the planet Earth.
Yeah,
And I think we're well on our way. And the goal is to spread more awareness and actually model, right? That's where it starts.
yeah, definitely.
Now, Amina, I know how attuned you are with the Mother Earth, and she is a living and breathing organism. I don't think everybody sees it that way, that she has her own needs and wishes and desires and emotions. At least that's how I experience the planet. So if you were to tune in into that living, breathing organism and pass on a message from our
Mm,
ultimate mother to all of us in this moment, what would that be?
mm. I would trust the wisdom of a fever.
Mm.
and to really believe that there is joy in being prepared for disruption, to train ourselves to react positively to disruption, which I think does really come with high temperatures on the planet. You know, and I see the wisdom of a heating planet. I think that a fever is a way of ridding illness, and that we can adapt and balance out.
Mhm.
I really do.
Like, yeah, exactly. So just like we have symptoms when we're unwell, the
Mm-hmm.
planet has its own symptoms, and they resemble our own symptoms. And
Mm-hmm.
so really being attuned and understanding the message in it is really what we can start acting on.
Yeah. Think about when we've had a really crazy fever, we might actually have visions, and stress
Hmm.
does crazy things to our lives. So just to really be predisposed to making the most of wherever you are, trusting that everything you need you have within you, that this is temporary, that this too shall pass, I think is the wisdom maybe in that too.
Beautifully said. If there's one last thing that you would like to share with our audience that I have not asked about, maybe feel free to do it now. What would you say? What would be your one message?
I'm so grateful that I got to introduce the chakra jump. So thank you so much for that opportunity to share and follow up. And I would say play for wellness, right? Not just this game, but in general, the more that we are willing to play with ourselves, with what's possible, with our closest partners, and with children, with older people in our lives, play is a lubricant to joy and ease and moving through uncomfortable things. So play for wellness, make time to play, become more playful. That's what I would say. Yeah.
Thank you so much. And if our audience is interested to learn more about your work, where they can find you.
Yes, I'm Aminah Teachout. That's the easiest way to find me anywhere you go at Aminah Teachout, AminahTeachout.com. And this is the Chakra Jump, which you can find at chakrajump.com or that handle, Chakra Jump. So fairly simple. I'd love to connect. AminahTeachout at gmail.com as well.
Thank you so much, Amina. And I want to let our audience know that everything that you just shared, the contact will be in the description box below this video. Amina, thank you for your grounded presence on
Thank you
this
so much.
planet. Thank you for the work you do. Thank you for the expanded heart of yours. And thank you for that beautiful light that you carry within and you share it with everybody who crosses your path so freely, so abundantly with so much love and so much joy. Thank you so much for sharing this space with me today.
We are reflections of one another. Thank you so much,
Thank
Dr.
you.
Amina, and viewers. I look forward to tuning in. Thanks again for having me.
Thank you. And thank you for being with us today. I am grateful for each and one of you tuning in into today's episode, and I sincerely hope that you found it insightful and valuable. And I hope you will take the action that is fully aligned with your vision for what Earth Day is all about. It's only in 2 days. Please remember to subscribe to this channel if you haven't yet to never miss an episode. And I will see you next time.